Welcome back to another video, ladies and gentlemen. China is threatening total war if if Trump doesn't realize he's made a mistake. I'm assuming in regards to the tariffs. This video was published by Times Radio just a couple of days ago. Oh, not a couple of days ago. Yes, April 8th. And it is by Victor Gao, right? So he's a Chinese lawyer. I don't know too much about him. Let me know in the comments if you do. But he is speaking here to Times Radio about what's going on. Now, I woke up this morning to news that a lot of countries are willing to negotiate with the US on tariffs and bring them down to zero. Now, the thing is with the tariffs, if you're not too familiar with what's going on, it's a lot more than just the tariffs and trade. Okay, guys, look a little bit deeper, not just on the surface. Okay, Trump isn't looking for trade deals only. He's looking for other kinds of deals. It would seem that China, instead of trying to negotiate, is actually just retaliating by boosting their tariffs, right? The percentages, and Trump is just doing the same. So who knows where this is going to go, who it's going to affect most. I've heard multiple different theories, opinions. It's going to affect China more, it's going to affect the US more. The US is done for, the US is, making enemies of everyone, etc. I've heard other theories and opinions on the opposite. So let me know in the comments below what you think, and let's listen to Mr. Victor Gao.
We retaliate against what the United States will do, even at the cost of a total war between China and the United States in terms of tariff war or trade war or otherwise.
A trade war between two of the world's biggest economies seemed unthinkable a few months ago, but that's where we seem to be this morning. President Trump has threatened an extra 50% tariff, which, if imposed, could leave some US companies bringing in certain goods from China facing a 104% tax. Carrie Locke is the former US ambassador to China and told us earlier there are a few winners in a global trade war.
The other country is going to retaliate, as we've seen from China and Canada and many other countries. They're going to retaliate, which means that the price of American goods being sold in those countries will go up, which means fewer people and companies will buy those American products. And if there's lower sales of American products, that means you don't need as many workers. And that means higher unemployment. All around, people are going to lose.
That was Gary Locke, the former US ambassador to China. Well, let's get the view from China now with Victor Gao, who's the vice president of the Centre for China and Globalization. Good morning.
Good morning.
The biggest question for everybody this morning, given the escalation, is what will China do now?
I think the Chinese government has announced that it will launch a mirror image of the tariff against China. And this is very proportional, very measured. It is completely in retaliation against the wrongful tariffs launched by the United States against China. Now, President Trump threatened to further increase 50% of tariff against China, and he demanded China to rescind the announced retaliation. I would say two things. One is that Chinese government will definitely retaliate again if the United States imposes additional 50% tariff against Chinese export. China will announce immediately 50% retaliatory tariff against the US export to China. Now, the second point, which is equally, if not even more important, is that in this round of trade war initiated by the United States, not only against China, but against so many countries in the world, China will not blink first. China will not be the first country to blink vis-a-vis the United States. In China, we have no panic buying of things made in the United States, for example, whereas in the United States, people are panicking. They are buying things from the supermarkets, from the department stores, made in China, made in other countries. Therefore, I hope President Trump and his advisors, some of whom are really very much flawed in terms of character and decency, for example, should realize that tariff will not save the United States. Tariff war against other countries is the wrong thing. Of course, different countries will decide what they need to do in front of such maximum pressure from the United States, but China's view is very clear. Stand up firm and do a tit-for-tat retaliation against the United States. And I hope by the end of the day, President Trump will realize how wrong he has been in using such maximum pressure against China.
And if
Certainly seems like China is the only country that is prepared to do this. I'm not an economic expert, but if other countries are willing to come to the table and China is not, what exactly does that mean? Let me know in the comments what you think it means, right? Let's just quickly look at some of the comments here on this video before we keep going. Zelensky's Oval Office prophecy keeps playing over in my mind when he told J.D. Vance during the war, everyone has problems, even you, but you have nice oceans and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. Yeah, I mean, this comment is related to the geopolitical landscape. The US is difficult to invade. No one's going to invade the US, but something could happen economically for sure. Sitting here in Ireland, and I must say I can't blame China on this one. Yeah, a lot of people are with China on this. And just going back to this, by the way, if something does happen economically to the US, I mean, even if the US becomes an isolationist power, it has a market that it can. It's a self-sufficient country. It's just in such a great location. It's just. Yeah, you know, it's surrounded by the oceans. They have great agriculture. It's if they wanted to, they can be an isolationist market, as can China in some ways, but not quite as well as the US, because obviously China is a land power. When the US tried this in the past, it was the dominant economy by a huge margin, now open 25%. A lot of that is services. Globally, everyone decided to isolate the US. It'll probably be devastated. I actually disagree with this massively, and based on some of the books I've been reading and the journals, I really disagree on this. This has actually been predicted what would happen by George Friedman in the next 100 years. George Friedman predicts that the US will become an isolationist power and will wake up again when there's a certain crisis, just like the US was kind of isolationist before the World War, and then it woke up after being attacked, and all of a sudden, you know, the US became the US empire. And now we're at this position in history where we have a multi-hegemonic situation. US were all for capitalism, bringing their products to market until the game didn't work for their favor. Yeah, I mean, in regards to the US and China, though, the US doesn't have full access to the Chinese market and economy, unlike the Chinese being given full access to the American market and economy. I never thought in my life I'd ever say this, but I'm rooting for China. Just don't see the American people being able to take the pain, unlike the Chinese people, who are far more resilient and patriotic. I think I might have to disagree with this. I think any small little issues in the Chinese geographic region could result in some real pain for the government. They have notoriously had to deal with internal issues. That's why they've always been a land-based power. So I don't think the Chinese people are as resilient and as patriotic as you think compared to the American people. However, I think both countries are very similar in terms of the makeup, and it could go either way. So yeah, let's keep going, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you think I'm right, I'm wrong. If you got the same opinion as me, you got a different opinion, I would love to hear what your opinion is.
Donald Trump doesn't realize, as
the biggest problem you might be facing right now is you might feel intimidated, nervous, or even
you say, that he's wrong and he doesn't go back on his tariff decisions, which all indications are at the moment that he won't. Is there any way to avoid a global recession as a result?
No, I think from the Chinese perspective, we'll never go to Washington and beg for something. China's position will be very clearly defined. Do whatever the United States is doing to China, and we retaliate against what the United States will do, even at the cost of a total war between China and the United States in terms of tariff war or trade war or otherwise. This is the firm decision of China. China will never cry uncle or go to Washington with its hat in its hand and beg for something. This is not the way China is doing. China is defending its fundamental interest in the right way, and the people in China support it. And I think eventually it will never be China who will blink first. Remember what I say, and let's wait for another day or another week or less than 4 years to come and to see what will happen.
And
I do find it a little bit, what's the word? It's a bit of a shame that a lot of people, particularly in the comments, maybe even you watching this, don't quite realize how shut off the Chinese market is. And much of the Chinese economy has been built not just because of Chinese innovation, which, yes, there is a lot of it, but mostly because of stealing, okay, and hacking of other countries. Now, anyone that's Chinese watching this is going to completely disagree, but this is what's been happening over the last decade or couple of decades. it's well known, it's well documented that a lot of the IP, intellectual property from countries all over the world has been stolen. The copyright, or, plans for things, etc., for advanced equipment has been stolen by the Chinese, and that has then been developed by businesses, and the businesses in China are typically linked to the CCP and propped up by the CCP, and money is invested into these companies to help build and grow the Chinese economy. They haven't done everything on their own, okay? And the fact that, like I said earlier, the Chinese market is very closed off. You can't just go there and start selling things into the Chinese market. They have a very protective system when it comes to their economy. I don't know if it's because of a CCP issue when it comes with communism, for example, or it's just the way that the Chinese do business. I'm not an expert on that specific point, but I know that is what happens. And so if the US is allowing China to sell into its market, why does China not allow the US to sell into the Chinese market? This is how it has been for quite a long time now. And so the fact that China doesn't want to negotiate or come to the table at least, I find it just a little bit strange and a bit of a shame, because I think that the two countries could do great things if they did actually work together.
You're saying that China can sustain through that amount of time. I'm interested there. You said no matter what happens, an economic war, a trade war, or anything else. What do you mean when you refer to any other kind of war? What do you mean by that?
Because the wars launched by the United States against China are already multiple wars. You are talking about the tariff war, the trade war, the technology war, the talent war, the energy war, and the threatened military war of different kinds, including proxy war, etc. I think China is fully prepared to deal with the United States as it is, as friend if they want to be, as a foe if they want to be, in any way, peace or otherwise. And I think this is the message China wants to give to Washington. Why? Because in matters of such importance to global peace and stability.
But can we be very clear here? Can we be very clear here? Are we talking, Victor Gao, about Taiwan?
Well, Taiwan is part of China. Every government in the world recognize that. No one should be diverted by the issue of Taiwan. Taiwan's reunification is the mega threat. It will happen during the lifetime of most of us watching your show.
Victor Gao, the Vice President of the Centre for China and Globalisation, many thanks for your time on the programme.
Interesting stuff. One of the things that you have to keep in mind, and I have to remind myself as well when I hear from Chinese experts like Victor Gao, who's a Chinese lawyer, I assume based in China, is that many of these people are just parroting what they are told by the CCP. I don't know if they always believe it, but they certainly parrot what the CCP says. And the CCP has one goal in mind at the moment, which is the reunification of China and Taiwan. As Victor says, many countries recognize Taiwan as being part of China, but many do not. Let me know in the comments below what you think could happen there. I think it will, if it does happen, would be a peaceful reunification, but I'm pretty adamant that Taiwan and the US and the Western world do not want that to happen for a variety of reasons. Everything from technology and semiconductor technology to, just a geopolitical landscape and atmosphere, right? So let me know in the comments below what you guys think about Victor Gao's comments, what you think about the trade war, what you think about some of these comments that we discussed earlier. As an older Brit, I never thought I'd be supporting China in a fight with the US. Strange times. Yeah, I think it would be nice. One of the things about YouTube is that with the comments, you don't always know who's actually talking, right? It could just be, a lot of it could be bots as well. Who knows these days? But yeah, let me know in the comments, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.